The lecture hall was packed with students from across the galaxy. 200 aliens sat in rows, their strange bodies filling the seats. Some had scales, others had feathers. Some glowed softly while others looked like walking rocks. They all listened as Professor Krelnax stood at the front of the room. Krelnax was a Vorzathi, tall and covered in deep red scales. He had 4 eyes that could look in different directions at once. His species was known throughout the galaxy as the toughest warriors. They came from a planet so harsh that most other aliens couldn't survive there for a single day. And so, my students, Krelnax said proudly, his voice coming through a translator device, you can see why the Vorzathi are the galaxy's only true Deathworlders. Our planet is brutal. The temperature changes by 70 degrees in just one day. Our gravity is almost twice what most of you are used to. The creatures that hunt on our world would give you nightmares for years. He pressed a button and a hologram appeared, showing a monster with too many teeth and claws like knives. Several students made frightened sounds. Some covered their eyes. No other species has evolved under such terrible conditions, the professor continued, puffing out his chest. This is why we Vorzathi lead the galactic security forces. This is why our warriors are unbeatable. This is why our survival skills are legendary. We alone know what it means to come from a world that tries to kill you every single day. In the 3rd row, a hand went up. The hand looked different from most others in the room. It had only 5 fingers instead of 6 or 8. It belonged to Danny Carter, a human. There were only 3 humans in the entire academy. His species had only discovered faster than light travel 15 years ago. Yes, Cadet Carter? Professor Krelnax turned his 4 eyes toward the young human. Danny stood up. He was shorter than most students around him, but he stood straight. With respect, Professor, have you heard of Earth? The question hung in the air. Students turned to look at the human. Some were curious. Others had never really noticed him before. Professor Krelnax's scales rippled, which meant he was amused. Earth, the professor repeated. He touched his data screen to look up information. Ah yes, the human homeworld. A recently contacted world. He read from the screen. A pleasant garden world, it says here. Gravity at exactly 1.0 standard. Comfortable temperatures, lots of water. Sounds quite nice, actually. That's just the basic information, sir, Danny said carefully. But if you look deeper into the file, you'll see something different. Cadet Carter, Krelnax interrupted, not trying to be mean. I understand that every species has pride in their homeworld. However, compared to Vorzath Prime, your Earth is basically a vacation resort. There is no shame in this. Most species evolved on gentle worlds. The Vorzathi are simply unusual. A few students made sounds of agreement. Danny's jaw tightened, but he stayed standing. Professor, Earth's oceans cover 70% of the planet. In those oceans live predators up to 30 meters long with hundreds of sharp teeth. Our atmosphere has 21% oxygen, which most species consider highly flammable. We have weather systems that create winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Our planet has volcanoes, earthquakes, and has been hit by asteroids that killed almost everything alive. The lecture hall grew quieter. Professor Krelnax's eyes narrowed. Go on, he said. Our gravity might be 1.0 standard, sir, but that's only because we set the standard when we joined the galactic community. Many human athletes can jump over a meter straight up from standing still. Our world has places where the temperature drops to minus 40 degrees, and other places where it goes above 50 degrees. We have insects that can kill with one bite. We have mammals that can crush bones with their jaws, and we live with millions of species of bacteria and viruses that we fight off every single day. Danny pulled out his data pad. But more than that, sir, humans evolved as persistence hunters. We don't have venom or claws or armor. We survived by being able to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can run for hours in heat that would kill most species. We heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. We have backup organs in our bodies. We can survive for weeks without food and days without water. Katie Murphy, another human in the class, stood up too. Professor, she added, humans have been to every environment on our planet. The highest mountains where the air is thin. The deepest parts of the ocean where the pressure would crush most ships. The frozen poles where nothing should live. The burning deserts where water is almost impossible to find. We built cities in places that should be empty. And we did all this before we even had spaceflight. Some humans explore dangerous places just for fun. Professor Krelnax's scales had changed from red to a darker purple. This meant he was thinking hard. He looked at his screen again, this time searching deeper into the files. Your planet has a moon. he said slowly. A very large moon compared to your planet's size. Luna, Danny confirmed. It helps keep our planet stable, but Earth still tilts quite a bit. That's why we have such extreme seasons. And your star, Krelnax continued, his voice less confident now. A G-type star. You evolved under quite a bit of radiation. We call it sunlight, Greg Austin, the third human, added. Too much of it causes cancer in our skin. We just developed darker skin in some populations and learned to cover up in others. The professor pulled up a comparison chart. The lecture hall's big hologram now showed Earth next to Vorzath Prime. Data started scrolling down the screen. Your tectonic activity is rated at 7.2, Krelnax read out loud. That's higher than Vorzath Prime's 6.8. Your biodiversity index is more than double ours. Your oxygen level would make most species in this room uncomfortable after a few hours. Your disease list is... He stopped talking, his eyes growing wider. Over 5,000 documented diseases that affect humans. We've built up resistance, sir, Danny said. Every human body carries trillions of bacteria that would be poisonous to most species. We need them to digest our food. A Peltharian student in the front row, whose species came from a low-gravity moon, made a worried whistling sound. You're saying humans are from a death world? We just call it home, Katie said with a small smile. Professor Krelnax sat down slowly at his desk. All four of his eyes stared at the data still moving across the hologram. The lecture hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one made a sound. Class dismissed, he said quietly. I need to revise my lecture notes. As students started leaving, many stayed far away from the three humans. They looked at Danny, Katie, and Greg differently now. Some looked scared. Others looked curious. But none of them looked at the humans the same way they had an hour ago. Danny caught Professor Krelnax's eye as he walked toward the door. Sir, I didn't mean any disrespect. The Vorzathi professor looked at the young human for a long moment. Then he made a gesture that the translator said was a smile. None taken, Cadet Carter. It seems the galaxy has much to learn about humanity. And perhaps, he added thoughtfully, the Vorzathi have been too proud for too long. Your Earth may not look like a death world in the basic surveys, but the more I read, the more I understand that looks can be very deceiving. Danny nodded respectfully and left the lecture hall. Behind him, Professor Krelnax kept reading about Earth. His scales kept changing colors as he learned more. Surprise, disbelief, and respect all showed on his skin. The next day's lecture, he decided, would need major changes. He had been teaching about Deathworlders for 20 years. He thought he knew everything about the subject. But in just one class period, 3 young humans had turned his understanding upside down. Earth didn't look like a death world. It looked beautiful from space, blue and green and white. But that was exactly what made it so dangerous. It hid its true nature behind a pretty face, and it had created a species that could smile while surviving conditions that would kill most of the galaxy. Professor Krelnax made a note in his personal file. Tomorrow he would start his lecture very differently. He would tell his students about a planet called Earth, a planet that proved that the most dangerous death worlds weren't always the ones that looked scary. Sometimes they were the ones that looked like paradise. News of what happened in Professor Krelnax's lecture spread through the Galactic Academy faster than light speed. By the next morning, everyone was talking about it. The 3 human students suddenly found themselves the center of attention. Aliens stopped them in hallways to ask questions. Some kept their distance, looking nervous. Others were fascinated. The xenobiology department received hundreds of requests for information about Earth. Professor Krelnax had to answer messages from colleagues across the galaxy, all wanting to know more about this supposedly gentle garden world that might actually be a death world in disguise. Commander Lisa Hayes was the human liaison officer at the Academy. She got a formal message from the Academic Council requesting a full presentation about Earth's environmental conditions. Now she stood in the Council's chamber, a large circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. 24 of the galaxy's most respected scientists and educators looked down at her. Lisa felt nervous but didn't show it. She had been in combat situations that felt easier than this. Thank you for this opportunity, Lisa began. I understand there has been some discussion about Earth's classification. Discussion is a gentle word for it, rumbled Chancellor Vox. He was a Kronar, a species that looked like walking boulders. His voice sounded like grinding rocks. Professor Krelnax has submitted a formal request to change Earth's classification from a Class 3 garden world to a Class 9 death world. This has never been done before for a species that joined the galactic community so peacefully. Lisa nodded. I brought data files, but I think showing you how humans actually live might explain things better than numbers. She turned on the holographic projector. The first image showed a human child, maybe 8 years old, playing in a grass field. This is a normal human child in what we call summer, Lisa explained. The temperature here is about 30 degrees Celsius. Notice the child is directly under our star's radiation with very little protection. A Peltharian council member made a distressed sound. That level of ultraviolet radiation would burn our children's skin within minutes. Human children are taught to apply a chemical barrier we call sunscreen, Lisa continued. But yes, we expose our young to radiation levels that would hurt many species. We think of it as normal. The next image showed a busy human city covered in snow. This is New York in what we call winter. The temperature is -10 Celsius. Humans are walking outside for work and play. Some are dressed warmly but not heavily. They're barely covered, said a Thelan council member. His species needed heated suits to survive anything below 20 degrees. Humans have very good temperature regulation, Lisa said. We can survive in temperatures from -40 to +50 Celsius without much technology. Our bodies shiver to make heat when we're cold. We sweat to cool down when we're hot. We adapt, she showed more images. Humans riding huge ocean waves on boards. Mountain climbers on steep rock faces where one mistake meant death. Marathon runners crossing deserts. Children swimming in lakes and rivers that might have dangerous currents. Each of these activities, Lisa continued, involves what other species might consider extreme danger. The ocean waves can break bones. The mountains have thin air and freezing temperatures. The deserts offer deadly heat and no water, yet humans do these things for fun. Chancellor Vox leaned forward. Commander Hayes, are you saying humans actively look for danger? Not exactly, Lisa replied. We look for challenges. We look for adventure. Humans have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not just words. Our bodies actually get stronger from stress. Our muscles tear and rebuild bigger. Our bones break and heal denser. We can get used to different air pressure, different oxygen levels, even different gravity to some degree. She pulled up a medical chart showing the human body's systems. This is the human immune system. At any moment, a healthy human is fighting off dozens of potential infections. We have special cells that find and destroy threats. We develop fevers, raising our body temperature to levels that kill germs even though it makes us feel terrible. Your species uses its own biology as a weapon against disease? Asked a medical officer from the Centauri delegation. We have to, Lisa said simply. Earth is full of life and not all of it is friendly. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi. We evolved alongside them in a constant war. A human's skin alone has millions of tiny organisms living on it. Our gut has trillions more. We're not just individuals. We're walking ecosystems. The council members looked at each other with concern. Lisa kept going. Then there's our psychology. Humans are social pack hunters. We form strong emotional bonds, but we can also be very aggressive when threatened. We have a stress response we call fight or flight. But humans often choose fight in situations where most species would choose flight. She showed video footage of human rescue workers running into burning buildings, emergency responders heading toward disasters instead of away from them, people diving into dangerous water to save strangers. This is considered heroic in our culture, not crazy, Lisa explained. Humans will risk death to save others, even people they don't know. We have entire jobs dedicated to running toward danger when everyone else runs away. Professor Krelnax was in the room as an observer. He spoke up. Commander, I've been reading historical records. Your species discovered nuclear fission only 80 years after you industrialized. You built weapons that could destroy your entire world. Yes, Lisa admitted, her face serious. We came very close to using them. We still have enough nuclear weapons to make Earth unlivable. Yet you didn't destroy yourselves, Krelnax continued. Why not? Because along with our ability to destroy, we have an equal ability to cooperate and hope, Lisa said. Humans are contradictory. We can be cruel and we can be compassionate. We fight wars and we write poetry. We destroy and we create in equal measure. We're complicated. She pulled up a final image. Earth from space, blue and white and green, incredibly beautiful. This is our home. It's a world of extremes. The deepest oceans and the highest mountains. Frozen poles and burning deserts. Violent storms and peaceful meadows. It made us tough, adaptable, and maybe a bit crazy by galactic standards. We didn't know we were living on a death world because we had nothing to compare it to. It was just life. It was just home. Chancellor Vox was quiet for a long time. The whole council chamber was silent. Finally, he spoke. Commander Hayes, your presentation has been very educational and somewhat frightening. The council will need time to think about Earth's classification. Of course, Chancellor, Lisa said. But if I may say one more thing. Go ahead. Humans are gentle by choice, not by nature. We've learned to control our aggressive instincts. We channel them into sports and competition instead of war. We offer friendship because we understand the cost of fighting. Don't mistake our friendliness for weakness. Every human in this galaxy carries the legacy of a death world in their genes. We're friendly because we choose to be, not because we have to be. After Lisa left, the council chamber stayed quiet. Finally, Professor Krelnak spoke. My pride, he said quietly, has been hurt, but in a good way. The Vorzathi have claimed superiority for a long time because of our harsh world. But Earth might be more dangerous than Vorzath Prime precisely because it doesn't look dangerous. It created a species that can smile while enduring conditions that would kill most of us. Then we agree? Chancellor Vox asked. Earth should be reclassified? The vote was unanimous. Every council member agreed. Outside the council chamber, Danny Carter was waiting with Katie and Greg. How did it go? He asked. Lisa smiled. Let's just say that humanity's reputation just improved. A lot. Is that good? Katie asked. Time will tell, Lisa replied. But at least now everyone knows not to judge us by appearances. The Academy's main computer updated Earth's file. The classification changed from Class 3 Garden World to Class 9 Death World. A special note was added to the file for anyone who looked it up in the future. The note said simply, deceptively habitable. Approach inhabitants with respect. It was, all the humans agreed, probably the most accurate description their planet had ever received. Earth looked gentle. It looked welcoming. It looked safe. But looks, as the galaxy was learning, could be very deceiving indeed. 3 weeks after Earth got its new classification, the Galactic Academy announced a big field training exercise. 200 cadets would be split into mixed species teams and sent to an empty planet for a survival test. The planet was called Training World Sigma 7. The goal was simple but hard. Survive for 5 days with very little equipment. Show the skills that future galactic explorers would need. Danny Carter found himself on Team Theta with Katie Murphy and 4 alien cadets. There was Vex, a Vorzathi warrior with scales even darker than Professor Krelnak's. There was Pleek, a Peltharian whose body was made of crystal and worked best in low gravity. There was Zara, a Thalen with shiny feathers and a very smart mind. And there was Korth, a Kronar engineer who looked like a walking mountain. The team met in the deployment bay to check their equipment. Each cadet got a standard survival pack, water purification tablets, an emergency beacon, basic medical supplies, a multi-tool. That was it. No food. No shelter. No weapons. This is ridiculous, Vex growled. His translator made his voice sound very deep. 5 days with this? On Vorzath Prime, we train in worse conditions with less gear. Sigma 7 is rated Class 5, Zara said, checking her datapad. Normal gravity, stable weather, no big predators. It should be manageable. Pleek's crystal body made a worried chiming sound. For you, maybe. My species needs specific conditions. If the temperature drops below 15 degrees, I slow down a lot. Danny and Katie looked at each other. They had read the information about Sigma 7. By Earth standards, it was basically a camping trip. Don't worry, Katie said. We'll figure it out together. That's the point, right? Learning to work as a team. The transport ship dropped them in a forest zone just after sunrise. The moment the door opened, Vex jumped out, scales shining, ready for action. Korth walked after him slowly, his sensors checking for resources. Zara flew up briefly to look around. Danny and Katie were last to exit. They stepped onto soft grass and breathed in air that smelled like pine trees and dirt. The temperature was mild, maybe 20 degrees. A gentle wind carried the sound of running water. Okay, Vex said, taking charge right away. We need to set up a perimeter, find water, and identify threats. Korth, start gathering materials for shelter. Zara, check the area from the air. Pleek, there's a stream about 50 meters that way. Danny interrupted, pointing east. I can hear it. The team stared at him. You can hear water at 50 meters? Vex asked, not believing him. Sure, Danny said with a shrug. Can't you? Vorzathi hearing is excellent, Vex said stiffly. But even I don't hear any water. Katie was already on her knees, looking at the ground. We have deer tracks here. Small mammals, too. They'll have trails to water. And look, she pointed to marks on a nearby tree. Something rubbed against this bark, probably marking territory. How can you possibly know that from scratches? Zara asked, very interested. It's just tracking, Katie said. Basic outdoor skills. Every human kid learns this at summer camp. The team followed Danny's directions and found a clear stream exactly where he said it would be. Vex's scales turned orange with surprise. Good hearing, human. Thanks, Danny said, already looking at the ground near the water. We should set up camp on this higher ground, though. See how the dirt is darker down there? That's the flood line. If it rains, the stream will rise. It's not supposed to rain for 3 days according to the weather data, Zara protested. Katie looked up at the sky, watching the clouds and wind direction. I'd give it 12 hours, maybe less. Those clouds are moving in fast and the air pressure feels like it's dropping. Feels like? Pleek chimed. You can sense air pressure? Sort of, Katie admitted. Humans evolved to read weather patterns. It's a survival thing. Over the next few hours, the team built their camp. Korth used his huge strength to move logs for a shelter frame, but it was Danny who showed them how to weave branches and leaves to make a waterproof roof. Vex hunted down a small creature that looked like a mix between a rabbit and a lizard, but Katie was the one who quickly and efficiently prepared it for cooking. Where did you learn to process game? Vex asked, watching her work with skilled hands. My family hunts, Katie said simply. Deer, elk, sometimes bear. You learn to use every part of the animal. Your family hunts for sport? Zara asked, sounding disapproving. For food, Katie corrected, and to manage animal populations. Humans have been hunter-gatherers for most of our history. Some of us still practice the old ways. That evening, just as predicted, the rain came. It wasn't a light rain. It was a heavy downpour. The team sat in their shelter, which stayed surprisingly dry thanks to Danny's building technique. Outside, lightning split the sky. Thunder boomed. Pleek's crystal form dimmed with fear. This is terrifying. Such violence in the weather. This? Danny looked out at the storm. This is nothing. Back home, we have hurricanes with winds that can destroy buildings. Tornadoes that can pick up cars and throw them. This is just rain. Just rain? Vex repeated. My homeworld has storms, yes, but we hide in caves, not shelters made of sticks. The shelter will hold, Katie assured them. We built it right. As if to prove her point, a big gust of wind shook the trees hard. But their shelter barely moved. Korth, who had doubted the light construction, made a rumbling sound of approval. The next morning brought new problems. The stream had risen exactly as Danny predicted. Pleek, who went out early, got lost in the changed landscape after the storm. In panic, he activated his emergency beacon. Danny and Katie found him in 20 minutes. They followed his tracks and used the beacon's signal. How did you find me so quickly? Pleek asked. I walked in circles trying to get back. You left a pretty clear trail, Danny said, pointing out disturbed moss, broken twigs, and moved stones. And you were heading downhill the whole time. Water flows down, so we just worked our way uphill from the stream. By day 3, things had changed. Vex, who started as the self-appointed leader, now asked Danny and Katie for advice on most survival decisions. When they needed to cross a river made bigger by the rains, Katie found the safest place to cross. When food ran low, Danny found plants that were safe to eat after checking them against the database. I don't understand, Zara said one evening. They sat around a fire that Danny had started using friction and dry grass. Nothing about this environment should give you an advantage. Yet you two move through it like you were born here. Katie put another stick on the fire. I guess we kinda were. Earth has forests like this. Rivers like this. Weather like this. Maybe not exactly the same, but close enough. Our brains are wired to read these patterns. Plus, Danny added, humans are adaptable. We can survive in deserts, jungles, frozen lands, mountains. We learn fast and apply knowledge from one environment to another. Vex, who had been quiet, spoke up. I began this exercise believing that Vorzathi were superior. We are stronger, more aggressive, built for a harder world. His scales turned deep blue, which meant thoughtful humility. But I see now that survival is not just about physical strength. It's about knowledge, adaptability, and reading your environment. In these skills, humans excel. We all have different strengths, Katie said kindly. Korth's engineering knowledge has been important. Zara's flying saved us time. Pleek's crystal body helped us purify water more efficiently. And your hunting instincts, Vex, are incredible. But you made it all work together, Korth rumbled. Human leadership is subtle. You guide without controlling. On the 5th day, the transport came to pick them up. The team walked out of the forest healthy, well-fed, and working together remarkably well. The academy instructors were impressed. Team Theta had not only survived, but done well. They had built a good camp that other teams would have been happy to find. In the post-mission meeting, the instructors asked each team member to say who had been most valuable to the team's success. Every alien cadet named either Danny or Katie. When asked to explain, Vex's answer was simple. They turned an alien world into home. That's not just survival. That's mastery. Professor Krelnax was watching the meetings. He made a note in his personal log. Humans may come from a death world, but maybe their greatest advantage is not that they survived Earth. It's that surviving Earth taught them to do well anywhere. They don't just adapt to environments. They make environments work for them. This may be the most dangerous trait of all. Back in the barracks that night, the team celebrated together. Vex brought fermented drink from his homeworld. Zara sang a traditional Thelen song. Korth told stories in his rumbling voice. Pleek's crystal body chimed with happiness. Danny and Katie sat together watching their alien friends celebrate. Think they'll remember this? Katie asked. I think we all will, Danny replied. This wasn't just about surviving 5 days on an alien world. It was about proving that different species can work together, that we're stronger as a team than alone. 6 months after the field training exercise, the Galactic Academy faced a major emergency. A distress call came from a research station on a planet called Kepler 442b. It was a frontier world being studied for possible colonization. Something terrible had happened. A geological event like a supervolcano erupting had destroyed the main facility. 23 researchers from 7 different species were trapped at an emergency shelter. They were running low on supplies and the air was becoming toxic. The rescue was complicated. Kepler 442b had gravity at 1.3 standard, higher than what most species were used to. The eruption had filled the air with ash and sulfur chemicals. Ground temperatures near the shelter jumped between -20 and +40 degrees, because the volcanic activity had disrupted normal weather. The ground was unstable, making it impossible to land a big rescue ship. Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the Academy's crisis center, studying the data with growing worry. We need a small team that can survive those conditions long enough to evacuate the researchers. They estimate a 6-hour window to reach the shelter, help the injured, and move everyone to a safe landing zone 3 kilometers away. 6 hours in those conditions? Chancellor Vox's voice was serious. Commander, most of our security forces couldn't work in that environment for 6 minutes without full protective suits. The ash alone would kill most respiratory systems. The temperature changes would shut down many species. The Vorzathi could survive it, one officer suggested. Perhaps, agreed Commander Kral, the senior Vorzathi military advisor. But only for a short time, and the ash would badly hurt our vision. We rely heavily on our eyes for hunting. Lisa pulled up a display showing the trapped researchers. We have 3 Peltharians in that shelter. If we don't get them out within 48 hours, their crystal bodies will start to crack from the temperature stress. The Thalen researcher is injured and can't fly. We don't have 48 hours to wait for better conditions. What about protective suits? Someone suggested. The ground is too unstable. Heavy suits would be dangerous, and the ash is rough enough to damage the seals. We'd be trading one problem for another. In the back of the room, Danny Carter stood with Katie Murphy and Greg Austin. The 3 humans were there as part of their advanced training. Danny caught Katie's eye and saw the same thought there. Commander Hayes, Danny said, stepping forward. Humans could do this. The room went silent. Lisa turned to look at the 3 young cadets. Her face showed nothing. Explain. Katie pulled up Earth data on her pad. Look at the conditions. Gravity at 1.3 is high. But humans train in higher gravity all the time. Our bones and muscles can handle it. The temperature range? We've survived worse on Earth, volcanic ash. We have many documented cases of humans surviving volcanic eruptions, including Mount St. Helens in 1980 and Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. The sulfur in the atmosphere would be toxic, an officer said. We can use basic respirators, Greg replied. Not full environmental suits, just filtered masks. Human lungs are very resilient. We evolved breathing air filled with dust, pollen, and other particles. Our bodies trap particles and sweep them out. We can work in contaminated air longer than most species. Commander Kral leaned forward, his huge form looking intimidating. You're suggesting 3 cadets barely trained for a rescue mission into a disaster zone? I'm suggesting that humans are uniquely suited to these conditions, Danny said firmly. Sir, with respect, this is exactly the kind of environment our species evolved to handle. Uncertainty, danger, rapid changes. It's what we're built for. Lisa studied the 3 humans. She knew what they could do. But this was different from a training exercise. Real lives were at stake. Her career. Their lives. The mission requires not just survival, but the ability to help injured researchers, carry equipment, and stay functional in hostile conditions for 6 hours, she said. Can you guarantee that? Nothing in life is guaranteed, Commander, Katie replied. But yes, we can do this. We should take Vex with us, too. He's proven himself and we work well together. Lisa looked at Chancellor Vox. The huge Kronar's face was hard to read. This is highly irregular. Sending cadets on a critical rescue mission. These aren't ordinary cadets, Lisa said quietly, and these aren't ordinary circumstances. Chancellor, you've seen the reports from their field training. You've read the analysis of human capabilities. If we don't act now, people will die. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. I trust your judgment, Commander Hayes, but understand if this fails, the consequences will be severe. I understand, sir. 2 hours later, a small transport dropped through Kepler 442b's ash-filled atmosphere. Inside, 4 figures checked their equipment. Danny, Katie, and Greg wore light respirators and thermal regulation layers under their standard uniforms. Vex wore modified gear to protect his sensitive eyes from ash. This is insane, Vex muttered, but there was excitement in his voice too. Wonderful, but insane. The transport couldn't land but hovered at the lowest safe height. The team dropped down on ropes through clouds of volcanic ash, landing on unstable ground that sent heat through their boots. Temperature reading is 38 degrees, Greg reported. We need to move before dark when it drops to -20. They moved fast. The ground was dangerous, covered in ash that sometimes hid cracks and holes. Danny took the lead, his trained eyes reading the landscape, finding the safest path. Katie navigated, keeping them on course even when they could barely see a few meters ahead. Vex's strength was invaluable when they had to clear debris blocking their way. 3 hours in, Greg's respirator got clogged with ash. Without hesitation, Katie shared hers. The 2 humans traded breathing from it while they worked to clear the filter. It was something human divers had done for decades underwater. No other species had developed this technique because no other species could hold their breath as long while staying active. When they reached the emergency shelter, the researchers were in bad shape. 2 Peltharians were barely conscious, their crystal forms dim. The Thalen's wing was broken. A Kronar engineer had gone into hibernation to save energy. We need to move them now, Danny said, before the temperature drops. What followed was the longest 6 hours of their lives. They carried researchers who weighed more than them, moving across dangerous ground in failing light. The temperature fell. Ash fell like poisonous snow. Greg hurt his ankle but kept moving. Katie's hands bled from holding a Peltharian's sharp crystal edges. Danny's respirator finally failed completely, and he made the last kilometer breathing through cloth wrapped around his face, his lungs burning with every breath. Vex, built for a harsh world, found himself struggling to match the human's endurance. How? He gasped at one point. How are you still moving? Because we have to, Katie replied simply. People need us. When they finally reached the pickup point, all 23 researchers were accounted for. The transport came down through the ash, its lights like a beacon in the darkness. One by one, they loaded the injured, the exhausted, the survivors. Danny collapsed after the last researcher was aboard, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. Medics rushed to the team, checking vital signs, giving oxygen. You should be dead, one Peltharian medic said, scanning Greg's readings. All of you. These stress levels, this physical damage, most species would have shut down. Most species, Katie said, managing a tired smile, aren't from Earth. The transport lifted off, rising through the ash and darkness toward the stars. Behind them, Kepler 442b continued its violent changes, not caring about the drama that had played out on its surface. In the Academy's crisis center, watching the successful extraction, Chancellor Vox turned to Commander Lisa Hayes. Perhaps, he said thoughtfully. We have misunderstood what it means to be from a death world. The Vorzathi created warriors, but Earth created something different. What's that, sir? Survivors. Real survivors. The kind who don't just endure hardship, but who run toward danger when others need help. Maybe that's the real gift of a death world, not just making you strong enough to survive it, but making you strong enough to help others survive. Lisa watched the transport's path on the display, a small smile on her face. We call it humanity, Chancellor. And I'd say it's our greatest gift to the galaxy. In the transport, as medics worked and researchers rested, Danny looked at his friends. Katie was getting her hands bandaged. Greg had his ankle wrapped. Vex's scales were covered in ash, making him look gray instead of dark red. We did it, Danny said quietly. We did, Katie agreed. Would you do it again? Vex asked. The three humans looked at each other. Then together they nodded. Every time, Greg said. That's what humans do. We help, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Maybe especially then. Vex's scales shifted to a color the humans had never seen before. The translator couldn't identify it, but they understood anyway. It was respect. Pure, deep respect. I am honored, Vex said formally, to call you my friends, and I am grateful that Earth made you who you are. So are we, Danny replied. So are we. 1 year after the Kepler 442b rescue, the Galactic Academy looked very different. A new division had been created called the Human Survival Training Program. Everyone just called it HSTP. Its purpose was to teach survival techniques developed on Earth to students from across the galaxy. The techniques were adapted for different species and their unique abilities. Danny Carter, now a lieutenant after graduating, stood before a class of 60 students from 20 different worlds. Beside him stood Katie Murphy and Greg Austin, both also wearing new uniforms with the HSTP symbol on them. Welcome, Danny began, to what many students call Death World 101. They're joking, but they're also not wrong. This course will challenge you in ways you haven't experienced before. The students were a mix of species, sizes, and shapes. They watched with curiosity and nervousness. In the front row sat Vex, now an instructor himself. His dark scales had new scars from recent security work. Katie stepped forward. Today's lesson is about one of the most basic human survival skills. Persistence, not strength. Not speed. Persistence. The ability to keep going when every part of your brain tells you to stop. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, Greg added, turning on a hologram that showed early humans tracking animals across an African plain. We didn't outrun our prey. We didn't overpower it. We just didn't stop following it. For hours, sometimes for days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion and we were still walking. A Peltharian student chimed a question, but that seems wasteful. Why not develop speed or strength instead? Because persistence is more useful, Danny explained. Speed fails when the ground gets difficult. Strength fails when you run out of food. But persistence? Persistence works in any environment, any situation. It's not just physical. It's mental. It's in your mind. It's what let humans spread across every environment on Earth, from the frozen Arctic to the burning Sahara. Over the following weeks, the students learned skills that seemed simple but were actually very challenging. Making fire without technology, cleaning water using only sunlight and containers, building shelter from natural materials, finding direction using stars and landmarks, giving first aid with whatever materials you could find. But more than just techniques, they learned the human way of thinking. The ability to judge risk versus reward, to push through discomfort without panicking, to solve problems with limited resources, to work as a team even when tired and stressed. Professor Krelnax, now head of the xenobiology department, often watched the classes. One day he came to Danny after a particularly hard field exercise. I was wrong, the Vorzathi said simply. A year ago I would never have said these words. But I was wrong to claim we were the galaxy's only true Deathworlders. Worse, I was wrong about what makes a Deathworlder dangerous. Sir, I thought it was about physical power. Claws, strength, fighting spirit. But watching your students, watching how you teach them, I see now that Earth's real gift to humanity wasn't making you strong. It was making you adaptable, tough, creative. You don't just survive harsh environments. You learn from them, you grow, you become more than you were. Danny thought about this. Every world shapes its people, Professor. Earth shaped us to be persistent, yes, but the galaxy is shaping us into something new. Teachers, rescuers, bridges between species. Indeed, Krelnax agreed, and perhaps that's the most important lesson. A death world doesn't create monsters. It creates survivors who understand the value of life because they fought so hard to keep it. Across the academy, the impact of human presence was visible everywhere. The cafeteria now served Earth foods next to galactic meals, with warning labels for capsaicin, the chemical that makes peppers spicy. Many species found it painful, but some were learning to tolerate it. The gym had been reorganized to include human-style endurance training, and other species were discovering benefits they never imagined. In the council chambers, debates continued about updating first contact rules. Earth's example had prompted a galaxy-wide survey of worlds previously listed as habitable. Dozens were being reclassified as death worlds. Species once considered peaceful garden worlders were being looked at again, with new understanding of hidden capabilities. Commander Lisa Hayes, now promoted to Director of Integration Services, found herself giving advice on policy that would affect billions. The question everyone asked was this: if humans could hide such capabilities behind a friendly face, what other species had been underestimated? The galaxy is safer with humans in it, Lisa told the council during one meeting. Not because we're warriors, though we can be when needed, but because we understand survival at a basic level. We know what it takes to face hostile environments, and we're willing to share that knowledge. Some argue that makes humanity dangerous, a council member noted. Everything capable of greatness is dangerous, Lisa replied. Fire is dangerous. It can burn forests, but it also keeps us warm, cooks our food, and lights our way in darkness. Humanity is like that. We're dangerous, yes, but we're also helpful, caring, creative. The question isn't whether we're dangerous. It's what we choose to do with that ability. In the training grounds, Danny's class was finishing their final exercise, a 72-hour survival test on a moon that had harsh conditions. The students who started the semester doubtful, even angry, were now moving with confidence through terrain that would have scared them months earlier. A young Thalen named Kira came to Danny as the exercise ended. Her feathers were dirty. She was clearly exhausted, but her eyes shone with pride. Lieutenant Carter, she said, I wanted to thank you. When I started this course, I thought it was about learning to be more like humans. But it wasn't, was it? No, Danny smiled. It was about learning what you're capable of. Humans aren't special because we're from Earth. We're just used to being uncomfortable and pushing through anyway. Every species has that ability. We just help you find it. My people evolved in tropical paradises, Kira said. We're taught that we're fragile, that we need specific conditions to live well. But this week I slept on frozen ground. I ate food I caught myself. I built shelter from rocks and branches. I didn't just survive. I succeeded. You did, Danny agreed. And you'll carry that knowledge forever. That's the real lesson. Not that you can survive like a human, but that you can surprise yourself with what you're capable of when you have to. As the semester ended, graduation ceremonies took on new meaning. The students who completed HSTP got a special mark on their records. Survival certified. It was becoming a desired qualification for anyone planning to work in frontier exploration, emergency response, or security operations. Vex, standing with Danny, Katie, and Greg as they watched the ceremony, made an observation. In one generation, you humans have changed how the galaxy thinks about survival, danger, and ability. That's remarkable. We just shared what we knew, Katie said modestly. No, Vex corrected. You shared what you are. There's a difference. The techniques can be taught. The mindset, the persistence, the refusal to give up, that's harder to pass on. But somehow you've done it. Maybe it's because every species has that potential, Greg suggested. Earth didn't make humans special. It just forced us to develop traits that were already there. Every species has survival instincts. We just help them remember. That night, Danny stood alone on the Academy's observation deck looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue marble among billions of worlds. It looked peaceful from here, beautiful, gentle. He thought about Professor Krelnax's first lecture, when the Vorzathi had said his species were the only Deathworlders. It seemed so long ago now. The galaxy had learned so much since then. Earth was a death world, but it was also a school for a species that would teach the galaxy that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the most aggressive. It was about being adaptable, persistent, willing to help others even when it cost you something. Humans had survived Earth not by conquering it, but by learning to live with it. And now they were teaching the galaxy the same lesson. Survival isn't about controlling your environment. It's about understanding it, respecting it, and adapting to it. "Beautiful night," came a voice. Professor Krelnax had joined him at the window. "Yes, sir." "I've been reading Earth history," the Vorzati said. "Your species has an interesting saying. Home is where the heart is." "Yes, sir. I think I finally understand what it means. Earth made you who you are, but you've made the galaxy your home. Not by conquest, not by force, but by being exactly what every community needs. Capable helpers who understand hardship and choose kindness anyway." Danny smiled. "We learned from the best teacher, Professor. Life itself. Earth taught us that every day is a gift, that survival is precious, and that the best way to honor that gift is to help others survive too." "Perhaps," Krelnax said thoughtfully, "that's the real answer to my first question. I asked if there were other Deathworlders. But the better question would have been this: what does a Deathworld teach its children? Forzath Prime taught my people to be warriors. Earth taught yours to be survivors. And survivors make the best teachers because they know the value of what they're protecting." They stood together in comfortable silence, human and Vorzati, looking out at the infinite stars. Somewhere out there were more worlds like Earth, more species with hidden potential, more children of harsh worlds who didn't